Guys, Anne-Marie here with a double whammy today. So this is a scrapbook layout process video. It's going to be single page, 8.5 by 11, single photo. But then I'm also going to make a set of cards with the scraps. So here we go. All right, so first up, I went through my stash of Disney papers and just kind of papers in general to see if I could find a background I liked. I pulled a lot of black and white polka dot type ones, and I ended up really liking this photoplay one that was kind of glossy. So I decided that was going to be my background, and then I pulled some 6x6 and 6x8 papers that echoed kind of that rainbow theme to go with it. So you can see I've pulled out a ton of pads and I'm just flipping through them until I find ones that I like. And I don't want to necessarily separate the pads or the paper from the pads. So I'm kind of stacking them up staggered, open to the one that I really like. When I got to this paper pad, I found a couple that I really liked. So then I started getting creative with how I kind of stacked everything. And then I'm setting the ones I don't want just off to the side. I'm really drawn to like paper pads, kind of like this one. I believe this is the honeybee one. It's just a lot of great tone on tones and some rainbow papers. I just love rainbows. In general, I'm a rainbow person, and anytime I can find a paper pad that's like that, it just seems so versatile. Maybe it's the stage I'm in with my kids, and maybe that will change as I get older, but I don't know. I don't think it will. Anyway, so those are the papers I ended up kind of narrowing it down to. I only ended up using 2 of these right there, those 2. They were the best. And it kind of became obvious after I stacked them like that. I was like, oh, yeah, no, I don't really need any others. So I just went ahead and went with that. But I did do my little trick where I got the cardstock first because I knew I wanted to matte the photo. All right, so I'm just going to use this kind of slider trimmer. And I tried to be really precise this time and like actually put my photo in the middle. But you'll see that that kind of backfired on me here in a second. I realized I generally like to cut a big mat and then cut down if I need to, because you can never, when you do this method, you can't go back and make it a bigger mat, right? So I wanted to start with kind of a bigger mat than I maybe necessarily needed. And so that meant that my hole was more like, I don't know, bordering on 5x7, and so that's a pretty big chunk on an 8.5 by 11 layout, and I just didn't think about that. Generally, when I do this, I am matting out to the very, very edge with just like a 1/4 inch border around it, and I started slapping my papers down and realized, oh, nope, my 6x8 paper, if I place it just a little off, it's not going to cover that hole. So I had to, just kind of redo it, and it was fine, but that's not where I initially really wanted to place that. I knew I wanted to make a rainbow for the back of my title, so I pulled out a rainbow die and some cloud dies, and then I went back to that honeybee paper pad and pulled 1 sheet for each color of the rainbow. This is where I kind of knew I'm probably going to make some cards after this, because there's no way, that one single little die, I'm going to have to cut it 6 times. It's going to make a lot of little rainbow pieces, and there's going to be a pretty good sized scrap left over at the end. So I started thinking kind of in the back of my head how I was going to use those up on some easy cards. So I just go ahead and I run this through 6 times and I get all sorts of little rainbow pieces. So this process was a little tedious and messy, and a better person than I would have stayed organized as they went and chosen the piece for each color that they wanted as they popped those pieces out. It's what I should have done. It's not what I did. And it was fine. It was all fine. But it did kind of make it a little more difficult on the back end, because as much as I just kind of thought the pieces will obviously be different, so it's fine. but it really wasn't that obvious to me. Like when I went back, I would very often get the two biggest pieces of the rainbow mixed up and the two smallest pieces of the rainbow mixed up. And it kind of came back to bite me with the cards. Like it took an inordinately long amount of time to sort those pieces back out. But whatever, it's all in good fun, right? For scrapbooking, it's like a mini organizing project every single time. So I had ran some white paper through with my cloud dies, but I decided to go for a little bit of a hidden Mickey, not so hidden. Um, but originally I thought I might make cloud shaped Mickey heads to be the clouds, but I ended up just using my Mickey head punch and putting a white Mickey head on top of the clouds. So it's kind of this really subtle Mickey in the clouds kind of thing. And you'll see more as we go along. But here's where I start regretting my decision to just cut everything out and pile it up because it looks fine. But as I went, it was kind of a pain. I'm going to save you my pain, and I'm going to just kind of scoot forward to the gluing. All right, so I realized even, if I just put the Mickey head directly on top and like balanced where the ears were, it still wasn't quite enough to go all the way across. And if I used the next size up of Mickey head, it was too big for the clouds and looked weird. So I just die cut a couple smaller clouds and kind of tucked those in. So it was a very layered cloud. And I figured that was fine. Clouds are dimensional. So I thought it looked fine. And then I knew I was going to build my title across, and so knew I could hide any little imperfections with my title letters too. So I think originally for my title, I wanted something like, give me all the rainbows, because that's kind of my life motto. And I tried to figure out a way to make that fit, and it wasn't going to work. It was shoving it over and making it look unbalanced, or it was falling off the page, or it was covering something in my picture. There just wasn't a way to make it work with these letters, and I definitely wanted to use these letters. So I pivoted and decided to do Rainbow Love, which was still off center, but oh well. I moved it a little bit over and tried to center it as best I could and went for it. I have some super, super anxious, I think they're stickopotamus letter stickers that were kind of rainbow. So I just picked some variations of colors and kind of just kept rearranging them until I liked how they looked. Then it was time to add my next embellishment, which I knew I wanted some enamel dots just kind of scattered, and I wanted at least one from each part of the rainbow. So I just started building my clusters. So I like to do usually 3 clusters of enamel dots with generally 3 dots in each, and I like to mix up the size and the colors. So that was going to give me 9 dots, and I needed to use 7 colors across those 9 dots. So I just kind of played around until I liked it. Then it was time to add my journaling, and I think I stuck in the line, give me all the rainbows somewhere in my journaling, because that just really is like a life motto for me. And then the layout is pretty much done. So here's the completed layout. I'll have still shots of that again at the end. And then on a separate day, I went and got all my scraps left over from that layout and set them out to make cards. I thought this would be easy enough to figure out, but guys, it wasn't. It was really hard. So I knew there would be 5 of each piece, and I don't know why it was so hard. It took me a long time to figure out, but what ended up happening, if you kind of see that green on the left-hand side by the 4-inch mark, it got cut. I don't know how or why, but it got cut short on the right-hand side. And so I kept thinking it was a different size than it was, and it kept getting moved and put in the wrong pile. And then I would put other colors in the wrong pile because, well, there's already a green here. So obviously this green doesn't fit here. And wait a minute, this blue doesn't fit with this green. So let me try this blue. And it was like a chain reaction, and it was kind of a nightmare, but it took me like a really long time I did eventually figure it out. I also went ahead at this point and I chose my card base die that I wanted to use, and I cut that base out of every color that I had left, which makes 6 bases. And if you're keeping track, I've only got enough rainbow pieces for 5 cards. So I am only going to make a set of 5, but I just went ahead and kind of batch processed this and cut a card base from all of the pieces and figured I would, obviously make a card with the other one at some later date. So I have my card bases set out. I was still kind of having trouble with the rainbows, but I had them set out. Like you see, I've got 6 rainbows there, but I knew that was wrong because I could only have 5 rainbows. So it doesn't matter. I figured it out eventually, but I got so frustrated that I went ahead and just cut my next layer out with my top note die that I have, and decided I'm just going to do that. And then when I actually start piecing the rainbows together, it will all make sense. And it did eventually, because that's how I figured out that my green had gotten cut weird at some point. It probably didn't help that I was at an online crop during this time, so I kept like chatting and talking to everybody, and that probably distracted me a little bit, but they also helped me figure it out. So, thank you, peeps. But I got them all, figured out, and decided I was going to set the purple card base aside and that I would match the background to the smallest arc in the rainbow. So I had learned, though, when I pieced my rainbow on my layout, part of the trouble was the pieces were just kind of free floating and not making sense. Sorry, you can see me talking to my friends there. And so I decided to make a template. So I kept this one scrap that had the kind of negative space from the rainbow, and I just stuck it down with a little bit of washi. And then I filled in the rainbow pieces one at a time, and that worked a treat. That was perfect. So you can see I have filled up my rainbow with my template. I just peeled that off, and then I'm going to move on to the next card and use that template over and over again for the whole thing. You can also see this is kind of where I figured out that one green piece had gone wonky. I had just left an arc empty on my orange backed card where the green should be, because I just didn't have any that fit it correctly. And then when I went back and looked at this one, I could see, oh, it's got this big gap on the side, but it fits the arc perfectly. So geometrically, this is the one that should go here. I'll just have to find a way to cover that gap when I do the card. So I've got my 5 card bases with my 5 rainbows, and I picked one sentiment that I'll use on all of them. And I just chose the words, "Hey there," and I'm going to cut it in black for each one of my cards. I tell you, I was hurting for my Xyron here, but I persevered and I did it. I kind of knew this would be tedious without my Xyron, and so I'd kind of saved it for this online crop, this particular project, because I knew, I kind of have some people with me. It just makes tedious things more bearable, right? So I did it, but good news, all my Xyron cartridges did finally come in. So I hope that means that little supply chain issue is kind of resolved. I was pretty sick of die cutting at this point, so I just got my Fiskars cloud punches and punched a couple to see what sizes I liked, and it turned out I liked the smaller ones better. Although I knew I might need that bigger one for the orange card with the weird gap. So most of them I use the smaller clouds, but on that one I did use the larger. So I got all my clouds on. I mounted all of my card bases onto card blanks and decided I would like a little twine or something, and it would be fun if I had one for each color of the rainbow. So I set out to do that. I didn't quite have any lime green, so I just used floss for that one. So I added a little knot of twine on each card, and that completed that set of cards. Very simple, but so cute. I got 5 really cute cards to go with this really cute layout. They just both make me so happy. And here are some still shots so you can see some close-ups. And that's the layout and the cards. So thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate your time. If you liked this video, please consider leaving a comment or sharing. I will see you on Friday for the weekly wrap up, and I hope you have a scrappy, happy week. Bye.